Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the second of this Essentials live session series. Today, we're going to be looking at more intermediate part modeling in SOLIDWORKS. So we're going to create a little bit more complicated parts than we created in the first session. So let's go ahead and move forward here and kind of cover what we're going to be doing. A little bit about me. I'm James Keller. I'm an instructional designer here at I Get It, and I'm a certified SOLIDWORKS subject matter expert. What to expect for this session. Basically, we're going to briefly review the information we covered in session one. It's only going to be about 2 minutes of review. So hopefully you guys were able to join that. If you've already a little familiar with SOLIDWORKS, it's probably nothing new to you. Then we're going to run through some more modeling examples using parts from this woodworker's vise assembly. In the first session, we created the little bracket here at the back end and also the ball end and the handle. We're going to start off today by doing this hub part right here, and then probably get into the complex features on this main vise assembly part right here. You're going to learn how to create more complex features, specifically rib feature and how to do some compound cuts. It's just a mixture of features to help you get compound curve geometry. It can be tricky sometimes. So hopefully you guys learn a little bit. And that being said, let's go ahead and just get started. So let's see here. We don't want that browser up. Let's go ahead and 1 second here. All right. Let's see. My computer is not responding the way it should be. I apologize. Get that out of there. And get SOLIDWORKS up. All right, here we are. So we're going to be working with this vise assembly. And like I said, in last lesson, we created this part utilizing sketching and mirror techniques. It's a pretty simple part. And this handle. So if you guys haven't done that yet and you want to follow along, we'll make sure that all these parts are available after the course for you to download and review yourself. So let's get moving. Like I said, today we're going to go ahead and start this part. I'm in an assembly document right now. You can tell by this little icon up here. Parts by themselves look like this at the top of the feature manager. I'm going to open this in its own document window. And there are a few ways I can do that. I can right click and choose open part, which will open it in its normal display state. Or I can choose open part in position, which will open the part in the exact position it is in the assembly currently. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Open part in position. And there we go. I have this part. So we're going to remake this guy today, starting off, and it'll include this counter bore hole feature down here at the bottom. So you guys will get an introduction to the hole wizard here shortly. So to recreate this part, I'll go ahead and just close this out without making any changes. And I'm going to start a new part. So I'm going to go File, New. And I can turn it. We have the new part dialog here, where you can start a new part, assembly, or drawing. Those are the 3 main document types within SOLIDWORKS. This is going to be a part, so I'll just double click that to start. And you have to create your initial sketch on an existing plane. So I think for this one, I'm going to use my front plane and I can right click or left click on the front plane and choose the sketch icon to quickly make a sketch. And it's always good to start your part from the origin, one of the things we discussed. So if I click a line out here and start randomly, there's nowhere for that first point to be anchored to. So SOLIDWORKS won't have a starting point to make sure all this geometry won't move around on you by accident. So I'm just going to undo to get rid of that and go back into the line command. And I'm going to ensure that I start on the sketch or on the origin with my first point. I'm going to click once and start to develop the left side profile of this component that I'm going to rotate. So I'm just going to do a rough outline of it. I'm going to click again to finish that line. I'm going to go up, click another line, and I can stay within the line feature move my cursor away, move back, and it's going to automatically change to the arc tool. So you can see over there on the left, now I've changed to the arc. And now I'm going to use inferencing to go ahead and click to create that arc. And then it jumps right back into the line tool after I create that arc. So it's a nice quick way to jump between lines and arcs while you're still within the same sketch tool. It's something that I use a lot. Click again to finish that. And then we're going to complete the profile. I hit escape there to exit the line command. And now the only thing I want to do is create some mirror line geometry here. So I'm going to select this, and from the pop-up, I can just click the convert to construction geometry button. And that's just going to change that to a center line, which no longer gives me a closed profile, which is fine because I'm about to make a closed profile. And go ahead and window select all those parts that I made. And we're just going to go into the mirror command. Let's see here. I have got menu bar in my way. Just 1 second. Drag this out of the way here. All right. So mirror entities with those selected, and then it asks me to mirror about. I'm going to go ahead and choose that line, and we see we get a good preview here. We want to make sure copy is selected so it doesn't just mirror the existing options, it copies them. And then once I do, you can see that it's created a closed profile, which is denoted by all this shaded information here. And now we have some blue line geometry here, which means it's not quite 100% defined. So let's go ahead and start adding dimensions. All the sketch entities, or I'm sorry, all the sketch relations that I wanted in this are, I'm going to exit, or were already created automatically as I was sketching. If you toggle the view sketch relations button here under that view menu option, you can see everything that was created. Again, I like to keep these off because it makes sketches look pretty busy, and you can always select a certain point or line or entity to see which relations are associated to it. All right, continuing on, we're going to go ahead and use Smart Dimension. It can be selected from up here as well. And I am just going to begin dimensioning the part. We want to make this 1 inch. And you can see I forgot to make my units inches. So even though I'm set to millimeters right now, I can still type in 1 IN for inch and then hit enter. And it'll automatically make that conversion over to millimeters. But before I continue, I'm going to exit the sketch and make sure I go select inch pound for my unit system. Now I'll go back in, begin editing the sketch again, and we can see that that's displayed as an inch now. A few more right here. This is going to be 0.05 inches. 0.05. And then I think I've got to do a radius here. I'm going to make this 0.625. Enter. Oops, sorry. We'll undo. Make that 0.0625. All right. And now we're almost completely defined here. I just got to figure out what this width is going to be. So go back in. It's one of the ways that I always see where I need to add dimensions or relations. Just start dragging on the entities that are blue, and you'll see where your degrees of freedom still lie in the sketch. So now that I've added that, we've got the sketch completely fully defined. Everything's black, and you can tell down here it says fully defined. So now let's go ahead and just revolve this into the base feature of our part there. So without even exiting the sketch, I'll just go to revolve. And it just wants to know the axis of revolution. Since this is an existing center line, SolidWorks automatically thinks that that's the line you want to use. I do not in this case, so I'm going to delete that. And with the box highlighted, just select the bottom entity here. You can see we get a good preview. It's going to be blind or 360 degrees all the way around. And there are more options here, which are pretty self-explanatory. Feel free to dive into these and test them out yourselves as you go and practice. So I'm just going to hit OK. And there we go. Now we have our base feature. Okay, so I'm going to go to my trimetric view there just by using mouse gestures. Look, everything looks good. Now I want to create another offshoot coming in this direction. So I will just select this face and view it normal too. And I can highlight my planes here to see which one's the right one to work with. And it's going to be the right plane. You can see that's the plane normal to this view. And I'll go ahead and start a sketch on it. And then similar to the last part, I'm just going to come through and create a rough profile first. You can use inferencing where needed. See how it grabs that center point right there? It should give me an inferencing line like all the way over here. It's not doing that, so I'll just click roughly here. And then continue all the way up. And now I can kind of move that out of the way. And we'll just add a dimension to define where the bottom of that point is. You can see that that changed this geometry up here a little bit. All I gotta do is start applying dimensions. Okay. This is going to be 1.5 inches. And we still have to define the radius here. Again, 0.0625. Right. We're going to jump right back into Revolve Base. Select the axis of revolution. And you can see that our preview looks like we want it to. Now we have the merge result option here. I want that checked because I want these to be one body and kind of merge the solid geometry there. If I hit OK, you can see that that is just one part. I still have one solid body up here. And to review, if I go in and edit that feature and uncheck merge result, you can now see that the graphics display is a little bit different. The edge geometry doesn't look the same. And you can see that there are two bodies, which is not what we want in this case. So I'm going to jump back in there, make sure that that's checked. Continuing on, we're just going to create a few through bores here. So I don't even have to look at the part normally. I can just select this face and choose that for my new sketch plane. I'm going to go up here, start a circle, snap to the center point of the existing circle on the face, and draw my circle. All right, so for the dimension on this guy, I want it to be a little bit bigger than our handle for the vise. So I'm just going to hold Control Tab to switch back over to the woodworking vise. If you hold Control and toggle Tab, it'll bring up this Open Documents dialog and allows you to switch through open documents pretty quickly. So now I'll go back over to that, and I can use this measure tool that's found on the Evaluate tab, Command Manager, to measure all kinds of existing geometry in SOLIDWORKS. So I'm just going to click the handle, and a diameter comes up for me. So that's 0.625 inches. So I don't want this new diameter to be much bigger. I think maybe a 32nd of an inch is probably enough extra. So I can type in, without even having to do the math in my head, I can just type in 0.625 and then plus, we could even do 1/32. So they can be mixed between fractions and decimals. Hit enter, and that automatically gives me the correct dimension that I was looking for. And you can see it here expressed in the decimal form. Say, okay, if you want to see more digits expressed over here, we can also just go for any individual dimension and change it over here. You can see now that there's more tolerance and precision shown for the dimension. Or you can go into your document properties and change them for all of your annotations and dimensions. So you got annotations here and dimensions, they're separate settings. But you can see if I go into dimensions, the top level, primary precision, we only got set to 2 decimal points. We'll go ahead and change that to 4. Say okay. And now any dimension I put in will have 4 units of precision there. So again, don't have to exit the sketch. You can just go right into an extruded cut. And you can see that SOLIDWORKS intelligently just gives you the options of what can be created with the sketch geometry you've done. So we can see that an extruded cut is one of the options. Just to say, we're not going to do a blind. There are lots of different options here. I could do through all, but sometimes through all can be a little problematic, especially if you add maybe another part or another multi-body to the end that ends up being in the scope of the cut. So I like to just say up to surface whenever possible. So I know I want to extrude up to this surface and not any further, no matter what that length is. So even if I come back and change the length of this, the cut will go no further and no shorter than it needs to. And I'll just say, okay. And we can see that that has created a through cut. All right, let's go ahead and create our last bore cut here. Again, same process, just start a new sketch. I'm gonna do a circle. This time it's gonna be a little bit smaller, only 1/2 inch. And extrude cut. In this case, all I have to do is say up to next. So it's going to find the next feature geometry to stop at. And again, won't go any further. And you can see in the preview that it's basically stopping right at that curved bore, which is just where I want it to. So this is all part of the design intent, selecting the right options to make your models robust. So if I were to change any of these lengths later on down the road, the through cuts would still go through that length without having to make any adjustments on that feature, the cut feature. All right, so we're getting pretty close here. This is almost done. The next thing we need to do is create a little hole feature right here on the top. So I'm going to look at from a top view to make things a little bit easier and start the hole wizard command. Now this gives you basically predefined options for all kinds of different hardware that you could apply and hole types. So if we click that, it is a wizard. So it'll help you kind of go through and select everything you need to. Got lots of different hole types here. I'm going to be using this counterbore type. I think everything that I want is pre-selected. A good option here when you're playing around is this legacy type right here. You can use this and define all of these individual parts of the hole and counterbore individually. Whereas the regular counterbore option here, it's kind of defined by the options you pick down here. So we're going to stick with the inch standard. I'm going to be using a Philister head screw for the set screw later on in the assemblies lesson at size number 10. You can see you've got lots of options here, lots of different bolt options and hardware options too to choose from. I'm going to use a normal fit. You have the option to do close, normal, or loose. Don't need to do any custom sizing on this one, but if you check that, it allows you to do certain like custom sizing. You can see it's pretty self-explanatory what they are. And I will use a blinding condition in this case, and it's already set to the right depth of 1/2 inch at up to the shoulder of the screw or the bore instead of the full length of the bore. A couple other options down here, pretty self-explanatory. Now that my type of hole is defined, I'm going to go into the positions tab, and this is how I choose where to put it. And now, because this is a circular surface, it can be more difficult than others, but the hole wizard pretty much figures it out for you. You can see as I move the hole position along the surface, you can see that it stays normal to the surface or as I move it. And we can actually position this after I click with dimensions and relations, just like you can other sketch geometry. So I'm going to click once to create a first instance. I could continue clicking to create more instances of the hole if I wanted to, but I only need the one. So I'm just going to hit escape once to stop that portion. I'm still in the positions screen, so I can move this around and define its position a little bit more accurately. So I want this to be perfectly in line with the origin here. So I'm going to go into my drop down instead of trying to select fuzzy graphics here. And I'm going to select my origin. And then I'm going to control select my sketch point. And it gives me relations that are possible here. SOLIDWORKS thinks I want to do one along Z, so it's highlighted that for me. It is right. You can see that that's the Z axis that I want to maintain. So I'll click that. And now I'm locked within the Z axis in line with the origin. The next thing to do is just add one more dimension between the face and the point. Add a 1/2 inch. And now that that point has turned to black geometry, and you can see that it's fully defined down here, I can go ahead and finish things off. And once I do, you can see the hole is created. So this whole wizard feature is pretty powerful stuff, especially giving you the ability to create holes on curved surfaces pretty easily. You can see what it did automatically is create a 3D sketch to position the point and a profile sketch to make the revolved cut that is needed for that hole. So all that was done automatically by the hole wizard. So it's a pretty unique tool. All right, so now we've got this part created, but I want to do one last thing before I move on. I want to apply a material to it. So materials apply not only an appearance to the part, but they will apply the physical characteristics of the part. So if later on you want to do some type of simulation with the part, or even just like a properties lookup, mass properties, how much volume the part has, what's the density, all that stuff. You can get that accurately from the material. So I just click edit material. You can see that there's a lot to choose from the dropdown, but edit material gives you the material dialog. And I do want it to be steel. And I think I just want it to be a basic like cast steel, nothing fancy. So we've got cast alloy steel down here. I'll highlight that. It gives us information about it, including its appearance. And I think I will just click the apply button, and that has now applied that steel to this part, including the way it looks. If you don't want to apply the appearance, but just want to apply the properties of the material, you can always uncheck apply appearance. And that will keep the model looking however you'd like it to, while maintaining the properties of whatever material you've chosen. So I will close this out, and you can see that it kind of made it a little bit darker, looks a little bit more like steel. You can change the way you view your models up here. Real view graphics will give you a little bit more realistic view, depending on your environment and everything else you have set. It could look a little different. You can now see there's a little bit of texture on there, like a casted part would look, and lots of different things you can do in here, like apply perspective. Perspective is hard to work with. Sometimes when you select geometry while you're working in perspective, it can be a little funky. So I just typically like to keep these things off while I'm working. You can always go in and change appearances from the appearance display manager here. So just that tab, and you've got appearances, decals, and scenes you can manage from this tab. So looking at appearances, we can see that it's added this cast stainless steel appearance. So I'm going to double click it because I want this to be more of a dark gray black than a light gray. And I can just modify the color. I think that looks perfect. Click OK. And there we have it. So to review, we could also have just dragged this stainless steel appearance onto the part to just get the look. So if I go over here and click remove appearance, you can see that it's still got this as the material is still applied. I'm going to have to go remove material to get rid of that. And now we're back to where we were, no specified material. If I want just that look to be applied and not the material, I can always go to the appearances tab and drag it onto the part like that. When you do, you get the option to apply it to just the face you drag it to, just the feature you drag it to, which in this case is the revolve, the entire body, which is what I almost use all the time, at the part level. And then you can do different things beyond that. But I'm going to go ahead and choose body. And again, just go back, double click to make that a little bit darker. All right, so I think this part is complete, and it can be ready to be saved off to combine in our assembly once we get going. So let's move on to the next part here. So far we've created the handle, this back bracket, and this hub. This guide bar here and the screw, hopefully we'll have time to get into that here pretty soon, but we're going to go ahead and jump into this part first because it's got some complex geometry that I'd like to show you guys. So again, I'm just going to open the part from the assembly, and you can see what we got here. Now, in this case, I'm going to review this part as I'm creating a copy of it for you guys. So a good way to review parts is by using the feature bar down here. You can see as I highlight this bar in the feature manager, it shows me a hand icon, meaning that I can adjust it. And all I got to do is click and drag up to change the features that are loaded into memory for any given time. So right now, you can see how I started this part was with a simple boss extrude using this sketch. So let's go ahead and edit the sketch and allow me to see everything, all the information I need to remake it. Looks like my origin is kind of in a unique area there. I think that's because I wanted to keep the origin in the center of the screw bar or the screw component. So let's keep going, and I'll just refer back to this image after making a new one to complete it. I'm going to go on the front plane. First, let's make sure that's what we got going on over here. So if you want to see, I'm going to exit the sketch. If you want to tell where a sketch resides, you can click on a sketch and click this icon here, edit sketch plane. That's going to allow you to change the sketch plane that it's on and display the sketch plane that it's on. So right now, I just confirmed that it's on the front plane. Don't want to change that, so I'll keep it there. Go back to my new part, start on the front plane. All right. I'm going to go back again and see how this might be made. You can see again, we've utilized symmetry here. So I think all I've got to do is sketch half this part first, and then just use the mirror command to create the other half. So I think I've got that down. Go back and start sketching. So I'm just going to start somewhere coincident or vertical to the origin, but a little bit below it. I'm just going to start randomly creating my profile there. Looks like I have to go back and double check. There we go. Sometimes I can even see from that little preview there what I need to do next. Just a few more concentric lines. Let's jump back. And it looks like I can do that. This goes back into the line, so I got to go back to the end of the line, then move again to get that automatic arc change. And then we're going to go straight up from there. Go over and back down. Need to make a few changes. All the automatic relations when I was creating that of tangency were done. You can see that if I select that segment, you can see there's a tangent relation. Same thing if I select that one, tangent, and so on. There's a good way to make sure that you got your tangency, but we don't have it here. So I'm just going to Control select those two entities. And I can do tangent from the pop-up or in the command manager. Go ahead and do that. And drag this down just a little bit. All right. And make sure that we stay vertical to our origin there. All right. Come in here, and just like our other sketch, you can see how I made that a center line. I will highlight everything and mirror the entities. So you can see this time I'm mirroring the entities before I put in the defining dimensions. Either way works, whatever you prefer. Sometimes design intent works better one way than the other, but you still get the same result as long as you end up defining things correctly. So we got 0.8 inches here. And again, I forgot to change my units. So I'll go ahead and do that. And if I do it without exiting the sketch, it'll make the change, but it'll exit the sketch for me. So I have to go back in. And there we go. Things are looking correct. Let's go back to our reference. Get some, that was 0.8. We got 4 inches down there. Let's start doing our radiuses first, because if we do our radii first, typically it shows you less change in the model as you're finishing it. Sometimes geometry can jump to be a little weird. So we've got a 0.8 and a 0.375 diameter to put in. Oh, 0.8, 0.375. You can see that this right here, we don't really need to define it because it's tangency to that and to that. We'll define it 100% once we're done putting the rest of our dimensions here. So next one we got, that's 1.25 inches across the top, 1 1/8 inches on that line. You can see how things start to look a little funny. Once I define this radius, things will go back to the shape that we're used to looking at. So we've got a height of 3.5 and a bottom segment of 4. Let's do that. Okay, so you can see that I've got some funniness going on there. I'm just going to exit real quick and just try to drag this. This is what I mean. Sometimes the order of operations you do for adding your sketches can be important. So you can see now I can drag that over a little bit and help define. It won't hopefully give me as funny of a. All right, so what am I missing here to get these guys defined? It's all tangent. Maybe there is a dimension. Let's go back and look. Oh, I bet you I know what I did. Yep. So what I did was make the center points of these radii contiguous down here at the bottom. And that's how I define that. So let's move back to our Other sketch, new part. And if I highlight those two, you can see that the center points show down there. And now I got to do is highlight those guys, Control Select, make them coincident so they share the same position. And once I do, we've got a fully defined sketch. Jump right into Extrude, and pretty sure this is 3/4 of an inch thick. We'll go back and double check. And there's the beginning of our part. Let's go back. You can see here, looks exactly the same, except for the color. And if I double click on the feature here in the feature manager, you can see it shows me all the related dimensions. So I don't necessarily have to go into the sketch to reference those dimensions. And a width of 3/4 was applied. So you're correct. Let's move on. So the next thing we need to do here is add to this to create that back part. So I'm going to edit that sketch to review it and see how it's done. Okay, let's move back over. You can see that that was created on the back side of this part. So I'm just going to select that face as my new sketch plane. And if we go back in, you can see that it shares, the sketch shares a lot of the same edge geometry. So we've got right there along the bottom edge, and then again on this edge, and again here at the top. So a tool I love to use is Convert Entities, and it helps you convert existing edge geometry into sketches. So if I Control Select those 3 edges, I don't think we need the top one, and I'm in a sketch, I have the option to convert entities here. So I'll go ahead and click that, and you can see it automatically created sketch geometry on those edges. And there is a relation created right here on edge. So that'll basically lock that sketch geometry to that edge no matter how the edge changes down the road, which is exactly the behavior I want. I'm going to go back in and see where the sketch differs. Okay, go ahead and finish that. I could use mirror here, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and sketch a little bit more quickly. And I'm going to come off the edge of this existing one to create, I'm going to use an arc tool actually. So we've got center point arc here. What I want to do is create a tangent arc. So I'll start on that edge or on that existing line. Doesn't like that. Only wants me to be on the end sketch point there. So let's try another method. We can move the end point of that all the way down here to roughly where I need it to be. And then I can go back into that tangent arc command. See the way I want there. I'll just double click to end that command. Let's go normal to the sketch. Go back in an align command to finish out the remainder. And then this is just, actually, you know what? I think I will use mirror there. Changing that. And then Control selecting that geometry. Jumping right in the mirror. And it kind of does it for us. Now all I got to do is go in and connect these 2 points to make sure they're coincident. All right, moving on. I think we need to add some dimensions here. Let's go back, see what we got. 4 and 2 1/4. So I want to dimension the original geometry if possible. and then see what is defining those curves as such. So in this case, I have the radius or the center point of those arcs directly under the edge of the profile. So that's how I'll define it. Go select those guys and make, let's see here, I don't think that's going to work. I want to do the point with that point, and then I can do vertical. All right, fully defined sketch, which is the way you want it to be. Jump right into features to create the next extrude. We're going to have this at 0.5 inches. Merged result, click OK. Okay, so we're moving on here. Go ahead and exit that without any changes, and then we can keep on stepping down to see what the next feature was. Now I created this little ridge here. So another cool tool is used to create that. I can expand the feature and show the sketch, edit it, just like we did prior. You can kind of see that this is basically the same as this edge geometry, just spaced a 1/4 inch away. So let's go in and see if we can create that. Use this as my sketch plane to create a new sketch. I'm going to select that geometry on the outside of this. Actually, you know, I can go ahead and just select this whole face. You can see. And then I can do a convert entities like I had before, or I can do an offset entities. And I think I can do this all in one command. So if I do offset entities, it doesn't work. That doesn't work for the face. So we're going to have to do that, convert entities first. Select the face, convert entities, and you can see how it basically did line geometry around that whole boundary of that face. I'm just going to go ahead and select those entities with a window select, and now I can do the offset entities command. And I want to offset those entities by 1/4 inch. And when the preview is good, you might have to reverse. So there it was trying to reverse it outside of the profile, so there was no face geometry or a surface geometry for it to preview on. Once I hit reverse, we've got everything showing correctly there. And I'll just come in and modify this bottom corner in a second here. So it's pretty close to what we want, but if you notice, this bottom corner has got a little radius on there. So I'll make that change real quick. I can just use my, again, tangent arc tool, I believe. Nope, it likes the endpoints. So I'll use yet another one, 3-point arc. So this allows you to use different edges to fit a circle or an arc within. So I click once for one extent of the arc, again for the other extent of the arc, and then a third time to set the angle of the arc, the direction of the arc. And now that that's in there, I can use my trim entities tool. Power trim is almost always what I use. You can, with that selected, you can just click and drag. And there we go. Looks like we had a little bit of a, you can see sometimes this type of thing happens. If I zoom in, you can see that the tangent C wasn't applied yet. So we've got a little double arc there, and I can just zoom in enough to get rid of that and zoom back out. And now I'll do a control select of these two entities to make sure that they're tangent on that end. And then again, on this end, make tangent. All right. Now that it's tangent, all I have to do is add a little dimension. So I think it was 3.75 or 0.375. Exit this so I can go over and look. Yep, 0.375. Double click to edit. Enter. There we go. All right. So again, I'm going to jump into the features, and we're going to do an extruded boss here. And you can see that SOLIDWORKS kind of figured it out for me and knew that I wanted to do this, most likely wanted to do this outside profile instead of either the inside profile of the sketch or both profiles. And again, if that doesn't give you the result you're looking for, you can always go to the selected contours option down here and define which contours you want to extrude in a sketch. So there we are. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK with merge result. And we're moving and grooving. Things start to take shape here. Let's go back and look at our example. We'll exit that without making any changes. Oh, it looks like I probably didn't, I extruded it too far. So I can double click to check the extrusion depth, and that is 1/4 inch. I can modify that, no problem. All right, let's continue on. So now we've got this little offshoot down here to create, which will be part of our compound cut geometry later on. So let's look at our sketch. You can see again that I use basically a lot of convert entities to make that happen. So go back in, create another new sketch. Use convert entities and then connect things to finish my profile. Okay, let's go back and double check just to make sure that's how I want it to look. But not quite. So let's see here. Let's see how that works. Okay. I only wanted it to come up to this point. So we'll just select those individual entities and hit delete. It's that simple. Back in. Double check my geometry one more time. I see what I did different there. I created a space there that I don't need. So let's go ahead and go backwards a little bit and change that up. Back on our part. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that sketch, the red X, without saving anything. Go back and change our original geometry there. These guys. This. What is defining that? I think the offset command to define that for me. So I'm just going to do an extend entities option here. So with trim entities, you also have the extend entities option. So I'm going to extend this guy, and it just knows when I click it to go up to the next line. SOLIDWORKS is nice and intelligent like that. And then same with this guy. I want to make sure that I've got this. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that as well. All right, I think I've got things working correctly here. Those two. And go back and reference. All right. That looks right. We'll do one more. That is already created, so offset. And now I'm just going to trim away the entities that I don't need again. Don't need that. Now we can see we've got an error here because of this little guy sticking off there. So as soon as I get rid of him, everything will go back. Dimension. That's funny. Looks like it got rid of my my on edge relation. So to keep that relation, I'm going to make sure that these guys is this edge and this line's center points are coincident. SOLIDWORKS likes to give you funky errors sometimes like this. There we go. And then we'll ensure that this is tangent and add our dimension. We want to make sure that this is tangent to this geometry as well. And now we'll come through and trim away the last little bit we don't need. This guy, that guy. All right. So I think we're back in the right area there. And as soon as I say okay and accept the sketch, it applies to the feature. I don't need to go back and create that feature again. All right. Back on track. Go ahead and run through this quickly. Just control selecting these edges, again, to do a convert entities. And I can close off the profile with one single line. And now I'm going to extrude this, but I want it to be always a little shy of this face. So let's go see what that value is. You can see that it's 0.05 inches away from this face. That's how I'm going to define it. So no matter how I change that geometry, again, it's only always going to be 0.05 away from this face. We'll do features, extruded base, and we'll do offset from surface, which allows me to define both the surface, which is pre-selected there, and then the offset value, 0.05. Now that I had a good preview, I know that it'll work, so I'll just hit OK, and there we have it. Running a little late, but let's just keep moving along here. We'll get through it. Now we're going to create that boss feature. You can just double click on it to get its dimensions. It's 0.625 in diameter and positioned that far away from both these edges. So let's make that happen. Too big. 0.625. Now I'll take the center and dimension it against this edge. Again, center point against this edge. And now we have a fully defined circle to create our boss feature. I think it was 0.375. I'll go back and double check that. See this right there? Oh, wow. So I have actually applied a draft to this feature. which is indicated right here by this dimension. I'll show you how to do that. Let's just edit this real quick so I can be sure of its length. Oh, so I used a face to define that extrusion distance. We'll go ahead and back out of that, show you how to do this. Edit that. Instead of a blinding condition, I'll choose up the surface like I did in the prior example and use this surface for the definition. I also want to apply a draft. So that's this guy right here. I put that on and you can see that it was 3 degrees of draft. That's because parts that are molded sometimes need draft to be removed from the mold. So a little bit of draft there helps this type of occluded feature to release from a mold pretty well. But in this case, it's not really necessary because sand molds are used for cast metal parts, and the sand just breaks out pretty easily. But things to think about when you created parts for molding. That's done. Let's keep on moving. Looks like the next thing I did was create these 3 hole cutouts. Pretty simple stuff. You guys could probably figure that out by now. 5 inches or a ½ an inch and 0.625 inches there. On this face. Create a new sketch. Create the first one. We'll go ahead and look at this straight on. Create the first one. Using mouse gestures to get to my smart dimension. Dimension it. There we are. Go ahead and do the second hole. It's not there. I'm going to use referencing when I'm in the circle command. If I reference this edge right here, you can see its center point pops up, and that's what I'll use to snap to for this hole. Point 625. And now, oops, escape. Well, I'll go ahead and create another one over here in the same way, and I'll show you how I'm going to define that dimension. So without dimensioning it, I'm just going to select both this circle and this circle, Control Select, and I'm going to choose a make equal coincident or a relation. So as soon as I do that, you can see that that geometry is now completely defined, and will update if I change the first hole. Again, without having to exit the sketch, we'll just go ahead and cut all the way up to the back surface to make sure they're through. And there we have our 3 holes at the bottom. Like I made another cut extrude in the back here. Let's go ahead and run through that one real quick. It is ½ inch deep and cannot see how this is defined. It's defined as the same width as those guys. Exit. Let's go do that. Go back around. New sketch. Highlight the edge or hover the edge to get the center point. Again, I'm going to select this edge and the circle. And again, choose make equal. Extrude that 0.5 inches. Get another cut extrude here. This is for the slot detail. Now we can see how to make a slot. See how this is defined. Okay. We'll go back to our new part and start creating that. Slot tool is up here. You got the center point straight slot, which is perfect for this example. Doesn't have to be the one you need to use, but we'll use it. It's where you go from the center point you can see how it creates the slot from the center point. So go ahead and click once to define the center point, again to define its length, and then click a third time to define the profile. Now all I have to do is just add some dimensions to make sure this is how we'd like it. 0.8 inches away from the top with an 1/8 inch radius, I believe. Now that whole thing is defined. Let's go back and double check. Yep. Oh, it was 1/2 inch from the top. So we'll go back and change. Fully defined, jump straight into features and do the cut. Again, all the way up to the surface. And now we have our through cut. See it right there. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and create this rib feature. This is going to introduce you to reference geometry. So you can see that I have a plane here that isn't part of my initial 3 planes. It's an extra plane that I inserted myself. This plane is what's going to, where the sketch is going to live, that we use to create the rib feature between those 2 bosses. So let's go ahead and create the plane first. To do reference geometry, I'll show you one trick here first. With the commands option selected up here in the search field, commands from the dropdown, you can type in a command name and it'll either allow you to activate it from the box, or it'll show you where it is. So if I type in reference, you can see reference geometry, and I can just click this to start it, or I can click show me where that is. And SolidWorks will go through and just show you exactly where it is. I didn't do any of that right there. It just automatically did it. And I can click go. Now you know where it is for future reference. All right, I've got looks like it created this thing here for me. I'm going to go ahead and close that. I don't need that. Let's go back into insert, reference geometry, plane. All right, so now you got some references to select here. Sometimes it takes 3, sometimes it only takes 2. But the first reference I'm going to select is my boss there. And then the second reference I'm going to select is, actually, you know what? Let's exit this. Hopefully don't break on me, SolidWorks. Uh-oh. Looks like we've lost SolidWorks here, folks. It's going to come back. We're running late here, so I'm going to jump through that part again, how that's created pretty quick. Okay. Coming right back up here. Hold on one second. I apologize, everybody. Let's get this going here. All right, we're back. So we got a document recovery tool here. Looks like it's going to allow me to automatically open that part. So if I select that, and maybe I can just double click it. Look at that. SolidWorks automatically saved everything for me and didn't let me lose anything. I'm going to hit R on my keyboard to bring in my recent documents. Go back into my woodworking device and open that part from there again for our reference. All right, we'll go ahead and get through this rib feature, and then I will continue the rest of this part in our next session, guys, so we won't miss anything. But let's move back over, finish the rib feature. I'm going to look at my references first for that feature. So the plane here, if I go in and edit that, we can see that I referenced the top plane for the first reference and then the center point of that boss for the second reference. So let's escape that and go make that change. Insert, reference geometry, plane. First reference, I'm going to do my fly out feature tree here, and I'm going to select the top plane. And it's going to automatically make it parallel to that plane. It's like a little funny display in here. So we'll go to our second reference, and let's see if selecting that does not do the trick. I'm sorry, guys. It looks like SolidWorks is going to crash on me again. I'll make sure that this is working well, and we'll cover it in the next session. So unfortunately, we weren't able to get through that today. Right. So I'll make sure that we cover that the continuation of that part in the future here on our next session. And you guys will be able to learn how to create that rib feature all the way up through the compound cut. And you guys will learn all the stuff we were hoping to get by there. Don't know why my system's giving me a hard time today, but I will have it sorted out by the next time we meet. So I appreciate you guys coming and learning from us today. Again, sorry for the troubles there. We'll make sure they're worked out by the next session. Hope you learned some stuff. We're going to continue modeling those parts in the next few lessons and even get into assembly management to create that whole assembly, including some top-down design, which means designing parts in the context of an assembly. So you guys are going to learn a lot of good stuff coming up. So hopefully you join us, and hopefully you guys thought that this was a valuable session. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.